for another episode of the Stephanie Gaitley Show. I'm Raffaele Elia, joined by head coach Stephanie Gaitley here to my left. Fordham coming off of a split week, 1-1. They took a loss to Dayton here at home, a close game, a 1-point game, and then went on the road against Richmond in probably two completely opposite games. Won that game, an unbelievable defensive game, to say the least. So let's start first, though, with that Dayton game. Obviously a controversial ending. We asked you about it after the game. 63-62 finish that ended with an inbounds. Bree Kavanaugh went down off the ball. Jamaris Davis tried to put back, didn't go down. But we asked you about it afterwards. You were obviously upset about it. You got a chance to look at the call, I'm imagining, and what do you think about it now?
I mean, I still feel it was a missed call. I mean, I've been in touch with the head of officials, and she's great. I mean, you just have to have a conversation about it. My biggest thought is I'm really big on consistency. You know, being accountable, being approachable are two big things with me from an official standpoint. That call, in my opinion, would have been called in the middle of the game. So if it's going to be called in the middle of the game, it's got to be called at the end of the game. And that's why I was upset, because if it was reversed and we were the defensive team up one and that call doesn't get made or it gets made, I might be frustrated because I might say, hey, let the kids decide the game. But I'm going to probably ultimately say it's a foul. You know, so in my opinion, it was a foul. And as I said to supervisor officials, I guess we'll disagree to disagree.
Yeah, it was just, you feel like more of a situational call than a kind of consistent call, which you see a lot. And obviously it's just, you know, that kind of a situation, I guess, from both sides, it's just really tough.
Yeah, but when it comes down to it, I mean, we had our chances to put them away. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. I made mistakes. The first thing you do in a game like that is you have to look at yourself. And I told the team that. I think, you know, I got to look and say, is there a call I could have done better, that we got a better shot? You know, you always have to look at yourself first. So officials are human. I mean, I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And, you know, you just kind of learn from it and move on.
What about those last, I guess, few possessions, which were so all over the place because you never knew what was going to happen? They should have probably put it away at the charity stripe, and they didn't.
Right.
You guys had your chances, Bree Kavanaugh from beyond the arc. So how do you call plays in that kind of a situation where it just seems like, at this point, just get a basket?
Well, it's tough because, I mean, you have to go with the hot hand. At that point, it was Bree. You know, like at Richmond, it was G. So it just depends on who's feeling it, who's in the zone, so to speak. So at the Dayton game, it was Bree. So the call was for Bree. And, you know, so after the game, you know, and trying to get better, you know, I talked to all the kids saying, what is your go-to play? Like, I assume that this is the call that they're most comfortable with, but I want to confirm it with them. Like, at the end of the game, if we make the call, what is the call that you say, you know, this is the one I'm most comfortable with? So that was part of the learning process. I mean, and I also think for us, I think we got comfortable, and I think that game was a reflection of Penn State. We didn't put them away defensively, and that, you know, I think we saw a different side of it when we played Richmond, but we had our chance to put away, and we had lapses defensively, and that caught up with us.
Well, you mentioned Bree Kavanaugh, 34 points, a career high. When you have a freshman, or at least a redshirt freshman, and you're trying to get to where they are and trying to gauge where they're most comfortable, you have to look at these games when they're slow or games when they're really hot and see. So what'd you see from that game that you want her to keep doing?
Just keep attacking, you know, be aggressive. She has a tendency, and she's been honest when we have our conversations, because we meet, you know, frequently individually with the kids, and she just said, I always start off a little bit hyper, and then I try to settle down. So, you know, she's been pretty selective about what she's done, and she started to get more comfortable. There's certain things that I think once we get to time in the offseason for repetition that will add to her game, that will make her, will certainly improve her. But that's all part of being on, even though she's older, it's still the first time in a collegiate game. So these are still all the first time experiences. So, I mean, I think, you know, Bree has not peaked, isn't close to peaking as a player, because a lot of it is going to be, you know, kind of the DNA of a player, of just understanding the game. And I think that's where growth will come in for her.
And that's got to be an exciting thought for you, though, seeing that this is a player that hasn't peaked yet, and here she is in a role that probably didn't see her in the coming up into this season, and she's performed this well in it. But how about now looking at another positive we could take away from that Dayton game, and that was Mary Golding making her return after 7 games, 4 weeks that you mentioned to us before the game, and I couldn't believe that it had already been 4 weeks. We had seen her in practice at VCU, shooting separate from the team with the one hand taped up, not putting a lot of pressure on it. And you mentioned a couple days, and even the day before, you didn't think she'd be on the court, and there she was playing 24 minutes. So take me through that.
Well, we didn't know that the day before the game, she had told us that and with the trainer, I work hand in hand with Justine, that it just hurt too much and she didn't want to jeopardize the team, and go out there tentative. So I said, totally respect it, whatever you feel you're most confident in. Then after shoot around, her and Justine came to me and said it felt really good. She wanted to give it a try. So kind of I went with what she was feeling because that's what Dr. Lynch, our doctor, said. Go. A lot of it is based on how she's feeling. So she said she wanted to give it a try, so we decided to give it a try. I mean, she was a little rusty, but of course she adds us an X factor that we were lacking. At even during that winning stretch. We got valuable minutes, obviously, from Kendall and from Zara, which I think helped their confidence, but we were still missing somebody that was experienced that was giving us 10 and 6 every game.
And then we move on to Richmond, traveling to Richmond. You took a win over there, 43-38. And that one was a game where Mary Golding looked to have a little more of her feet underneath her, 15 rebounds, 7 points, almost a double-double, which is where I guess she's left off. We talk about Jamaris Davis, a kind of walking double-double. Later on last season, and when she started to get into a groove early this season, it seemed like that could be someone you have to rely on for maybe another kind of double-double game every game from that kind of a player.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've always said from day one she's our X factor. I mean, because you hope G's on, you hope Bree's on, but if you can get something from her and something from Luaren, and then obviously then you put Joey and Zara and Kendall and Haley together and hope that group of 5 or 4 can give you like 12 and 6 together, and so for us it just Mary getting more comfortable and getting more minutes, and I mean I think she looked a lot more comfortable in Richmond than she did at Dayton. And it gives us that luxury of playing with a different lineup. Like for last quarter and a half, we went small. So G was back at the 5 spot, and Mary's back at the 4. And it creates, for us defensively, G's just, she's very active and athletic and can get out on ball screens a little quicker. So it just creates a little bit more things for us, from a defensive end.
And then looking at that game, a lot of shots just wouldn't fall. Low field goal percentage for them. For you, from beyond the arc, it was 3 3-pointers the whole day for both teams combined. But from a Stephanie Gaitley mind, is that still, a very defensive mind? Is that still considered an ugly game, or is that the kind of game that you like to see? I know you probably want more shots to fall.
It was ugly. I mean, it was ugly as far as I thought we defended really well. I thought we were really sloppy with the ball, and I give a lot of credit to Richmond just because the way they defended screens, our kids struggled with it, even though we prepared for it and we knew what was going to come. It was new to Bree, it was a new look, and she struggled with it. Luaren struggled with it. I mean, Luaren was uncharacteristic, 1 assist to 4 turnovers, and this is the first time in a few games we've had more turnovers than assists, and it wasn't like they were pressing. It's just that we were doing it in half court and just got sloppy. So, I mean, I was just really proud. I mean, their lowest scoring game was 50, and it's a team that really, really values pushing the ball aggressively. So to keep them to 38 was an incredible accomplishment. So I was really proud of the defense.
8th time a Gaitley-led Fordham team held an opponent under 40 points. And now my last question to you is going to be something that happened last week as well, or happened after we had the last Stephanie Gaitley show, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, baby, EAGLES.
Coach,
yes.
I'm gonna be rooting for you guys. Fly Eagles, fly, going into the Super Bowl.
I wish Jenna Cosgrove was back so we could go back and forth with the Patriots, but
I heard Sonia though was.
Sonia. Well, she's a Tom Brady fan. I mean, come on, what normal woman is not a Tom Brady fan? But yeah, she's a Tom. Well, he's a winner. I mean, I just really loved what he said after the game about his hand, and he said, "I'm not going to act like it's hurt because even though it is hurt, because then I look cocky, and we just won. I played a pretty good game, so I loved how he handled it. He handled himself really well. I mean, with the Eagles, with Foles coming in and having to pick up where Wentz left off, it's difficult. We already have a couple tickets to the Super Bowl. I unfortunately won't be going, but my boys will look like they'll be going. Fortunately, our brother-in-law Bruce took care of us, so there will be some representation in Minnesota.
Well, Coach, we'll have you back in just a bit. But first, let's go on the court with Johanna Klug and Lauren Holden. And girls, thank you for being here today.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us.
Johanna Klug is a freshman. Obviously, you've been on the show earlier on in the season, though. Lauren Holden, a junior, obviously one of the staples of the team. Now, obviously, we go through this time and time again with Coach Gaitley. So now that we have you here, Lauren, I want to ask you, are you tired? You average like 39.2 minutes a game or so. You fluctuate between the top of the nation in minutes played. You probably don't take a seat for a game unless I don't even know what goes through Coach's head when she's like, okay, Luaren, you're off. And I don't know how you would react to it because you're so not used to sitting. So we asked Coach. She gives us the same answer. Oh, no, my players, they're always on it. So are you tired?
I mean, I guess that for everyone, there's some points during the game, like if there's a long run or something, obviously we get tired. But I think, myself and a few of the other players have gotten used to just playing those amount of minutes so far this season.
So what's the reaction when you get pulled off for a minute or two? You're always off for about a play or so, but when you get pulled off. But since it's so rare, what's your reaction to it?
If I mess up, then I know, I mess up, but I trust everything that, Coach does. So if she's pulling me out for some reason, there's obviously a good reason that she's doing that. So
awesome. Mm-hmm. Joey, we had you at the beginning of the season, which was really before you became a staple in the Fordham starting lineup because of obviously Mary's absence. That's obviously going to shift, and we'll get into that. Mm-hmm. But first of all, the success that the team has had so far with you in an unexpected role at the 5, how's that been for you?
I mean, it's great. We're getting better every day in practice and during the games. And now after our tough loss, I think we came back in our last game and showed what we can do. And yeah, it's been great so far.
And now what's your reaction to Mary coming back? Obviously, it's going to be a little different of a rotation now. Obviously, Coach could play big or small, and you'll still probably be the main role in the 5. But with Mary back, it's going to be a lot of moving pieces throughout a game, let alone throughout the season. So how are you preparing to get into that?
I mean, Mary is like a big help on and off the court. She's very vocal, trying to bring everybody in and trying to help our team out. So I'm glad that she's back, and yeah, she has like a big influence on the team, which is really good, yeah.
Was it as unexpected for you girls when Mary came back that game? I know I was a little unprepared for it. I heard last that she wasn't going to play in that game against Dayton, and then all of a sudden she's in for about 20 minutes. Was that surprising to you girls on the bench as well, or were you pretty aware?
I would say I was kind of aware that she might play that game. She was definitely going back and forth about it, but when she did play, obviously it was good for us. I was glad that she did play in the game.
And now, taking us through that game against Dayton, obviously from the broadcast position was going to be a heartbreaking game for either team toward the end because it was just such a good game, such a great shootout that whoever pulled it off last minute, it was going to be a steal regardless. It would have either been them having the game stolen from you guys as it ended up being, or you guys stealing it from them last minute if that shot goes down from G. So sitting on the bench or actually on the team, on the court, take us through those last couple possessions.
It was definitely very intense. I'm sure Joey would agree with me.
Yeah.
It was very intense, but those points in the game, you just got to be very focused on what you're doing, and especially on defense and trying to execute things offensively during that time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it wasn't even the last couple minutes which stole us our game.
Mm-hmm.
It was little details during the whole game which ended up for us being our loss. But I think we can improve in it, and we still have another game at Dayton.
Well,
so.
you're definitely coached by Coach Gaitley with that kind of an answer. The small details obviously being the paramount thing that leads to the end. So how about in the locker room after that game? What was Coach like? I know when she came to do the post-game interview, I was scared. She kind of had an angry look on her face because obviously of the call that she feels was missed on Kavanaugh going down. So how was it though post-game? Obviously, it's tough to hold your heads too far down because you played such a good game against such a good team. But how was it afterwards?
Well, obviously the energy in the locker room, we were all pretty upset, but when Coach came in, she just told us, you got to keep your heads up. It was, a tough loss, but something that we learned from. And she always tells us too, regardless, if we win or we lose, we either suffer or we celebrate till midnight, and then next day is a new day. So that's how we kind of took that loss.
And then going against Richmond then and playing, I guess, a completely different game in that it wasn't a shootout. Shots just would not fall over there. And it still ended up being a similar game in that toward the very end it was back and forth and no one knew what was going to happen. So take me through that kind of a game. and how exhausting is it now having back-to-back close games? Exhausting not in the physical sense, but in just having to mentally deal with that kind of stress.
Yeah, during the Richmond game, I think we did a better job with our details in offense and defense. That's why we ended up winning, I guess. And yeah, I think yeah, we overall did a better job and came back from our loss, which was pretty good.
And now we're about midway through the season, one more game to go, and I don't know that we'll have you guys back next week, and don't know when we're going to have you back. It'll probably be past the midterm grades. I'm not going to bring it back to that when we next talk to you. So I want to get it now. Where would you guys grade yourselves at the midway point in the season, and where do you feel like you're a lot better than where you thought you'd be, and where do you still feel like you need improvement?
I think there's always room for improvement for our team, but so far I definitely think that, this team has really good chemistry, and I think that has helped us win a lot of games and just sticking together through the ups and downs. And I still think there's a lot of things we have to improve on, especially going forth into the rest of the season, especially tournament time. But I think so far, I think we're doing pretty good sticking together and things like that.
What about you guys individually then as players? I mean, obviously starting with you, Joey, because this is obviously your first time playing not only here in the States, but here just in the college game as a freshman, having such a big role. Where do you feel like you've improved midway through?
I guess stepping up sometimes and giving G or Bree or Luaren who play the most minutes of our team and who totally draw the defense to help them out when they doubled and get a easy layup or open shot.
Well, now you're going to be looking ahead to St. Bonaventure and then traveling to George Mason. So we wish you guys good luck, and we're going to go now look forward to those games with head coach Stephanie Gaitley. Now let's look forward to a couple of games here. Fordham has a game against St. Bonaventure, followed by a game against George Mason Thursday and Sunday. And, Coach, first off, how's the team now? Both of your last games were so tight, so really just to the finish. Both different games, obviously, more of a shootout against Dayton and then more of a defensive show against Richmond, but still came down to the wire. Now 2 games coming up. How does your team feel?
I mean, we've made it really clear to them that it gets harder, especially when you have a target on the back. Everybody comes at you. It becomes their big win of the year. And so, it's never easy. So, I mean, Bonaventure they beat Penn State, and we lost to Penn State, so they're kind of up and down. And they have a great player, and so they have a go-to player, Mariah Ruff, and they're well coached. So, I mean, respect all, fear none, and that's kind of how we're attacking it. And then we go and have to play a really strong George Mason team with a post-grad transfer from UConn who's really lighting it up on all ends, on the rebounding and scoring.
Mm-hmm.
They have an outstanding freshman point guard and very well coached. So the road gets harder, doesn't get easier.
And then before we get into the nitty-gritty part of the games themselves, we're about halfway through this conference season now, about 7 games through now with in a 16-game season. So I guess next week we'll officially have crossed that halfway point. But now moving into it, what's your midpoint your midterm grades for your?
It's so hard to say. I mean, Thursday will be the halfway point, is because I mean, if you look at the schedule, we have a monster schedule at the end. We play all the top teams at the end, and most of them on the road. So it's just we're kind of taking it one day at a time, just trying to get the kids better every day, so that when we get ready for the next game, we're ready for the next game. So I'm not really looking ahead as much as just trying to take it one day at a time.
And then obviously we talked about Mary Golding being back. What's the impact on the team? And just from a coaching perspective, you've had to deal with such a different team. You've probably had to deal with about 3 different teams this entire season. So how is that for you, trying to now focus on to where your team's strengths are with Mary back in the lineup?
I just think it's, I just have such high standards and expectations, and I have to always remind myself to kind of step back and realize that at one point 5 of our top kids were freshmen, like before Mary got back. So we were playing with kids that are facing these situations for the first time, regardless of how old Bree is. She's still playing as a freshman. And then you've got Haley, and then you've got Joey, and then you've got, Zara and Kendall. And so, 5 of our 7 were freshmen. And so I had to remind myself of, like, okay, they are really, really young. And, I give a lot of credit to the leaders, which are G, Luaren, and Mary, as far as keeping the kids focused and locked in. Like I've said all along, the chemistry in this team has been the best since I've been here. It's just they like each other. They might not always be best friends. You don't have to be each other's best friends, but there's a mutual respect amongst each other, and I think that has a lot to do with our success.
And how is this going to affect now the lineup in general? I saw Kendall Jeremiah only about 3 minutes total played these last couple games with Marion. Is this going to be more of a dichotomy of you'd like to see Joey and Haley in at the 5 and just move Mary and G to 4-3?
I don't know. I got to be honest. There's times our best lineup is 4 guards with Mary being the 4. And that would put, give more minutes to Kendall and to Zara. A lot of it just depends on who we're playing. Like, it got to the point midway through the third quarter, I just looked at the bench and said, I'm going small, because Joey wasn't a factor. She wasn't effective. We really weren't getting anything on the block from Haley or Joey. They were doing a good job defensively and really good job on the boards, but scoring-wise. So I just felt like our best lineup would be to put some pressure on them and put Mary out there as the 4. And then, and also I think that helped us defensively because of the offense Richmond plays. It's a fast-moving, motion-type offense, and so it gave us the opportunity to match up a little bit better.
And this has got to be now the deepest your team has been in a long time, so you have all those weapons that now you could start to plug in, play small ball, play big. You don't have to really worry about one or the other throughout the season, I guess, or throughout the game.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. It's just, having that option to go small or go big, which is great because Haley and Joey play off each other very, very well. And then, you have Kendall and Zara. Like, Zara gives you a little more defense. Kendall gives you a little more offense. So a lot of it just depends on what you're looking for in that particular game.
And then now just a couple on the actual games themselves. You mentioned St. Bonaventure. They're struggling this season, 7-13, 2-5. They were preseason ranked low, but they are a very up-and-down team. So how do you prepare a team coming to your house, granted, but prepare a team that you don't know whether you're going to get their A-plus game or you're going to get their C game?
You know what? We prepare for our opponents, so we know what we're going to see. But to be honest, I'm more worried about us. Like, my mentor, Dick Bernhardt, he's since passed away. Like, he was a high school boys coach. He was actually my college coach's coach. And he said, so many times coaches make the mistake of spending so much time on the opponent that they really got to focus on themselves. So I really took that to heart. So my number one concern is, are we doing what we do well? We obviously prepare for what the opponent's going to do, but, we need to do what we do well, and we need to, kind of, tighten some things up a little bit. So we kind of look at it as we see no name on the jersey we're playing. We see somebody stands between us and being in, right now in third place and continuing to either stay there or climb.
And then your last game of the week is going to be against a George Mason team on the road. A George Mason team that's very similar to you guys in that they were preseason ranked pretty low, and they've really taken off. They're 15-5 like yourselves, 4-2 in the Atlantic 10, but nipping at your heels in terms of the standings. What have you seen from that kind of team, if you have looked at them at all?
Oh, yeah. You see teams based on the fact that if you're getting ready for other teams, you see them. Natalie Butler is, she's hard to guard. she's a walking double-double.
As advertised?
Yeah, she's as advertised. Because she's got such great size. She's a willing passer. I think their new point guard is outstanding, new freshman point guard who's shared with Bree a lot of the Rookie of the Week honors. And they're just really scrappy. They play really, really hard. And so they're a tough matchup. So, I think, anytime you go on the road, it's really, really hard. So we're just basically taking it one day at a time at this point.
Thank you, Coach. And that'll do it for this episode of the Stephanie Gaitley Show.
Kavanaugh, that's a 3, and that's good. Recovers after Ladd had knocked it away. Davis fighting through the double team and rolls it in. Fordham a 5-0 run of their own with those 2 fouls. This is Holden for 3. Knocks it down. First lead for Fordham.
Really good in the post.
Jones from downtown.